Blah 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 blah. Hello everybody and welcome to I'll Tell You What TV, the unofficial F1 podcast, where hopefully tonight we will be talking about the Bahrain Grand Prix. Although, if anybody has seen James, can you let him know that we're doing a podcast tonight?
Yeah, and over to you, James.
Yeah, James.
James.
Yeah, so James is AWOL at the moment.
He's probably doing liveries on GT Sport.
That is quite possible. If anyone's talking to him on PlayStation or anything like that, tell him to get his arse on to Skype. I mean, we've tried Skyping him, we've tried Facebook phoning him, we've tried messaging him on Facebook, we've tried texting him. We've not heard anything from him at the moment, which is a bit of a shame, really, because I was talking to him a couple of nights ago, and he was really looking forward to talking about this race because he asked me what I thought of the race, and my response was I thought it was fucking brilliant. Probably best race I've seen for 8 years, something like that. It really was a fucking brilliant race.
Well, when I spoke to him, I said, "Oh, you'll have to wait till the podcast."
Yeah, well, he's made you wait till the podcast, but he's not here. But yeah, so hopefully James will. I mean, hopefully he's just having a nap or something, and he'll wake up and go, "Oh, what's that? That's live on YouTube? Oh, fuck!" And then we'll get a message saying, "I'll just go for a shit. I'll be there in a minute." So the only thing that me and Steve can do is, obviously, we don't want to do too much of the podcast without James. Obviously, he is an integral part of the crew. So what we're going to do while we're waiting to see if we hear from James is we're going to go through how we got on with with the predictions for the last race. We don't have to talk. We won't have to talk much about like how people did and stuff like that. I mean, hopefully, that's where we want James to wake up and get involved with it. So we'll go through the predictions that we had, and you know what, Steve, you said right as an extra that there'll be no rain, and it very nearly did rain. I think on Saturday, or was it Friday, it was showing a 60% chance of rain for Saturday.
I know that Johnny Herbert was saying that it rained the day before they got out there, and no one was believing him. It's like, no, honestly, it did rain in the desert.
Yeah. But yeah, unfortunately it didn't rain in the race, but to be fair, it didn't need it. Okay, so Steve went for Hamilton to take pole position and wasn't even close on that one, unfortunately. Nope. James went for Vettel, and he was a bit closer, but no points for James. Let's see, I went for Leclerc. I was going to say Leclerc went for me, but that's not the way it was. I went for Leclerc, so I got a point. Foo-hoo. And to be fair, he did a great job to get that pole position, but I have got a theory about that I'm going to hold on to for a little while. Steve, you went for Lewis Hamilton to win the race, and
yes, get him.
I can't believe you actually looked into that one. But yeah, James, on the other hand, said Max Verstappen was going to win, and to be honest,
nowhere near.
Yeah, I barely even remember seeing him in the race, unfortunately. And I said it'd be Vettel, which at one point it could have been, but yeah. No points for me. On to the podium then. Do you remember who you said for the podium, Steve?
I think I said Hamilton, Max Verstappen and Leclerc, or something, or those three, but I'm not sure what order.
Those three in that order.
Alright, okay. So I got 2 correct.
Yeah, 2 correct in the correct position, so you get 4 points on that one. Which is going to help you out nicely. James went for Leclerc, Verstappen and Bottas. So James gets 1 point for Leclerc, because he didn't get him in the right position. He doesn't get any bonus point. And so I was getting my prediction sheet open. Let's see, who did I go for? I went for Vettel, Leclerc and Hamilton. So I get 2 points for Leclerc and Hamilton, but no bonus points because they're not in the right bloody order. And then let's see what was next. First to crash out. Steve, do you remember what you said on that one?
I said nobody will crash out.
That you did. And how many crashed out?
No one.
No one. Absolutely bloody nobody. James said it'd be Perez, which is usually a good shout, and I went for Hulkenberg. And yeah, so me and James, no points for us. And then, interestingly, one of the bonus predictions was how many drivers will finish on the lead lap. Do you remember what you said, Steve?
I can't remember if I said 8 or 9. It might have been 8, something like that.
It was 8. James went for 9. I said 6. Do you know
how many was it?
It was.
I don't know. I haven't got a clue.
It was 11.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is quite a surprise, really. A lot more than I was expecting, anyway. Obviously. Okay, and the next one, or the last of the predictions that we went for, was, I must admit, I completely forgot about it until today, and I thought, oh, this is going to be a pain in the arse to find out, but actually it was very easy. And the prediction was, who will be the last to pit out of the Red Bull, Ferrari and Mercedes drivers? Steve, you said it'd be Leclerc.
Yeah.
James said it'd be Gasly, and I said it'd be Leclerc. Do you want to have a guess at who it was?
I think it was Charles Leclerc.
No, it wasn't.
Was it Gasly then?
It was Gasly.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. He pitted.
Oh yeah, he went long, didn't
He
he?
went long, so he pitted last. So
Yeah.
James actually gets the point for that one. And what that means is, on the predictions, it means that Steve, you scored. You know what, I'm going to question this now. Your new bonus point system for the podium has given you a massive boost here.
Yeah.
So I might have to question that with James. But yeah, you've scored 6 points.
Cool.
James has scored 3 points. I've scored 3 points, which means the points total is... I have got 5 points, James has got 5 points, and Steve has got 11 points. We're already 50% behind. What the fork?
What can I say? Just good predicting from me.
Dodgy. There's something dodgy going on there, I'm sure of it.
I had nothing to do with the Curtis car breaking down.
Yeah. Well, why I'm going to mention a couple of things we can perhaps talk about. I mean, there's a chance that James might not turn up this evening if we just sit here waiting. Excuse me, we could be waiting for a while. We are going to continue to keep calling him and seeing if we can wake him up and get him on. But yeah, the situation with the Renaults, that was desperately odd.
Yes, both at the same time in the same corner with the same similar fault, I think it was.
Yeah, well, Hulkenberg's engine basically blew, didn't it? But Ricardo's, just everything shut down.
Well, apparently it's something to do with the turbo. And when the engine management system recognises that there's this fault, all right, occurring, it shuts the engine down. So with Hulkenberg, it went as he was going flat out, and that's why it popped and he come to a stop. With Ricardo, it went as he was at low revs mid corner, and that's why it shut down and he wasn't able to drive away from the corner. But they were saying that since it's something that they've put this shutdown mechanism on since Carlos Sainz went bang and all the caught fire. So basically, it's to try and prevent it from catching fire.
Well, yeah, because I mean, if you think about it, with Renault, where even when Jolyon Palmer was there, they had a season where I think 3 or 4 times over the course of the season, the car ended up in flames.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes sense that they would incorporate some kind of safety system in there. That does kind of make sense. Okay, Leclerc, right, takes pole position, should have won the race, but without a doubt, I think Lewis Hamilton's response probably was mirrored by so many people who are fans of F1. Just absolute heartbreak for him in the race. But I mentioned about I might have a little bit of a theory. And what it is, I mean, Leclerc was faster than Vettel all weekend, right? Through practice, through qualifying, through the race. I mean, for Leclerc to fuck up the start as he did and recover and dick Vettel in the way that he did, and not only that, I've seen something that I'm going to mention as well. I saw this today. Yeah, for him to have that amount of pace, it was almost as if they were driving 2 different cars.
Well, yeah, I mean, how come Vettel wasn't able to get back at Leclerc the following lap in the DRS?
Yeah.
It was like Leclerc, once he'd got past him, he was gone.
Well, here's my theory, right? Ferrari had no pace in Australia. Something seemed odd, right? Everyone was saying they were going to be super fast, and they weren't. And there was a little bit of discussion during the race about whether Ferrari had been nursing a problem in Australia. So here comes the theory.
Go on then.
In Bahrain, you know that potentially there's a problem, but you're not sure. So you get your number 2 driver to push the engine to the limit. So the engine's turned up more, so it's running more power, basically pushing the engine, and let's see what it can do. Your number 1 driver, he doesn't do that, right? He drives just to get to the end of the race. in as best a position as possible, but your number 2 driver drives it as fast as he can, as hard as he can, with a possibility, a possibility that it might blow up effectively, which could explain why Leclerc was so much faster during practice sessions and qualifying, and even more so why Leclerc was so much faster during the race, right?
Yeah.
And another part of this, the thing that I said I saw today was it was to do with Leclerc overtaking Vettel, right? I think it's absolutely brilliant. The thing is, I know on Sky they were saying, oh, it's brilliant that Ferrari are letting them race. Well, today I saw the footage and heard the team radio, where Leclerc was caught up to him on like the end of lap 4, and he says to his engineer, says, come on guys, I'm quicker, right? And this is sort of heading down towards the first corner, I think it is, or turn 4, and then heading towards the hairpin, turn 8. His engineer says, copy, just stay in that position for 2 laps. And I'm thinking, why would you want him to stay in that position for 2 laps? You either tell him just stay in that hold position, or you say, okay, you're free to attack. Why wait 2 laps? But what does Leclerc do? At the end of that lap, he overtakes Vettel into turn 1. So he hasn't waited 2 laps. He's thought, fuck this, I'm so much faster, I'm just breezing past him. And he does, and he fucks off. So then I'm thinking, why would the team say, just stay where you are for 2 laps? Well, if you think
unless it was to do with cooling.
Exactly, following a car, dirty air, hot air. Will the engine cope when you're following another car? Now, unfortunately, the team, like the video clip, ended just as Leclerc made the overtake and the defence into turn 4. So I don't know what was said after that, but it would make sense if they were testing the engine. You would potentially say, sit behind him. And not only that, I don't know if you remember, but through a lot of the practice session, do you remember that Leclerc was not far behind Vettel quite a lot?
Yeah, they kept coming out of the pits in pairs, yeah.
Yeah, and it was always Leclerc a little bit behind Vettel, and it wasn't to do with getting a slipstream boost, because he was kind of a bit too far away.
Sat the same distance away from him all the time, so he wasn't benefiting from the slipstream.
Yeah, so I do think that Ferrari have effectively sacrificed Leclerc in that race, and the theory being, well, the strategy that Vettel was on, had he not fucked up, would have potentially won him the race.
Yeah. Well, also, what you think about is when Hamilton pitted, they responded with Vettel pitting and not Leclerc. Obviously, you would have thought they would have tried to protect the leader, not Vettel.
Well, it depends. If the gap between the leader and Hamilton is big enough, I mean, you see Mercedes did that plenty of times over the last few years. If the gap is big enough to the leader, you don't worry about it. You protect your second driver. But yeah, I mean, Leclerc was just so much better over the course of the whole weekend that I do think part of it was testing the engine, but at the same time,
it makes sense. It makes sense from what I've heard as well. And what I've heard is, in Australia, they went too conservative with the cooling on the car, and which means they opened up more air vents, more air intakes, which basically increases drag, reduces the speed on straights, but they had good cooling to the car. So what they've probably done here is with Leclerc's car is they've closed off more of that cooling than what they have on Vettel's car. So they've given him a more slippery car, so there's less drag. He's faster in a straight line, because he was faster in Sector 1 all the time over Vettel. And that's where your straight line speed's coming from. So that would make sense that they've opened up Vettel's cooling more than they have Leclerc's. The fault that was reported by Ferrari, they've reported it as a cylinder fault. Now, they've not said what was wrong with the cylinder, but basically from one of the YouTube channels I watched. Basically, that could have been a spark plug. It could have been anything to do with that cylinder not working. Now, could it be due to temperature that it's not working? Because there's not enough cooling? Would the engine automatically shut down one cylinder if it gets too hot? Don't know. But it wasn't the engine battery recovery system business that they thought it was at the time on TV. It was basically running on 3 cylinders, or not 3 cylinders, 5 cylinders instead of 6.
Well, that's a bit of an odd one. I mean, they did say that it was a H problem, which is to do with the heat recovery, but yeah, I mean, obviously sometimes they're guessing, aren't they? But yeah. I mean, either way, I mean, Leclerc should have won that race. It's unfortunate that he didn't. Interestingly though, I don't know if you noticed, obviously at the end of the race, Max Verstappen crossed the line right behind Leclerc. Now, I know effectively the race finished under safety car, but actually F1 racers don't finish under safety car. Now, as far as I was aware, if it is basically going to be safety car to the end, the safety car will pit, but then I thought the drivers were free to race the final part.
Okay. I watched Mark
Priestley.
Not Mark. Yeah, Mark Priestley, is that his name? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I watched his, and there's a rule, I think it's 16.1 of the such and such, whatever, and basically, when there's a safety car for the last lap of the race, the safety car will go into the pits with its lights still flashing. Which means that the safety car is not coming in this lap. That means the race is finishing under safety car, but the car will go in. The safety car goes into the pit lane, and the drivers must cross the line in formation.
That makes sense then.
If you remember back to Monaco a few years ago, Michael Schumacher tried to jump somebody in the last couple of corners.
Well, he did
because of the same thing.
He jumped Alonso.
Yeah. But yes, when the safety car goes into the pits with its lights on the final lap of the race, basically you cross the line in order. And it's just basically so that they're not actually following the car across the line.
If I remember rightly, though, the one with Monaco, that rule hadn't been put in place at that time. So when that safety car came in, it was a safety car had come in, and there's still a corner to go in the race. So it's probably
green flags were waving.
Yeah, so it's probably because of that they adjusted the rule a little bit to say, like, if it finishes under, well, let's put it this way: if the safety car starts the final lap of the race, it should end the final lap of the race as well.
Yes, I think that is a rule now as well. That's what triggers the that following bit.
Yeah, which makes sense. So the only reason I mentioned it was because I actually thought that maybe Verstappen had a bit of a heart and thought I could overtake him and get third, but it'd be a bit cruel, so I won't. And to be fair, if he had done that, he'd have earned a hell of a lot of respect in my book. But it turns out, no, he's just going by the rule book.
I think if I was him, I'd have overtook him anyway.
Yeah, it'd have been
so I'd have said, I thought he was broke down.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I've been trying to hold off talking too much about anything else. I'm trying to sort of give James every opportunity of getting onto the podcast here, but at the moment it doesn't look like that's going to be happening, so I guess we're just going to have to really crack on. And for anyone that's watching this, feel free to give us your base views on what you thought of the race. Personally, I thought it was absolutely thrilling, and one of the ways you can tell when a race is entertaining, it's proper full of action. And to be fair, I think it was full of so much action and so much different action, including cars breaking down, battle. It had absolutely fucking
cars
everything
coming together.
Yeah, and the way to tell that it's good like that is when the commentators can't do anything other than continue talking about what is happening on the track.
Yeah, but also not only that, you can tell it's a good race when you don't get random pictures of the crowd, because I didn't see that once.
True. What about pit lane? I can't remember.
Yeah, it was very rare that they cut away from the action, because there always seemed like there was always something happening or going to be happening soon, or what have you. But what I would say as well is something we mentioned last week, the graphic to do with the overtake percentage when somebody pits. I understood it this week.
Yes.
They only showed it once, but it was clear to see that when Vettel was pitting, he was going to lose his position.
Yes.
I think that's what it was showing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was clear to see, which was good. But what's your thoughts on Vettel's race?
Personally, I just want to quickly say as well, if anyone's having problems watching the live stream, I do apologise. There's not really much I can do about that. Yeah, I mean, Vettel's race. I mean, okay, he had a very good start. He had a very good start to the race. And then after that, it just looked like he wasn't quick enough. But it looked like he was in a fairly comfortable position until the pit stops came around and until Hamilton starts applying some pressure. And then, to be honest, I kind of hate to use the term, but he fucking bottled it.
Yeah.
To have a spin like that all on your own, and you're a 4-time world champion, that's a bit unusual, that is.
Would you see Alonso doing that? He's only a 2-time world champion. But would you have seen Alonso doing that?
I don't think so. Would you see any other driver doing that? I mean, who else did overtakes into that corner? Fucking plenty of people. I mean, okay, Sainz squeezed Verstappen there, and that didn't work for him. But yeah, I mean, I know that Hamilton, when Hamilton went for the overtake, he'd seen that he'd got a very strong headwind and he was able to go really hard on the brakes, and that headwind turned into a side wind around the corner. But I can imagine that anyone involved in your racing league, Steve, probably having seen that, may have sat there and gone, well, he had too much steering angle applied when he put the throttle down.
The thing is, though, it could simply be just that. To me, it looked like he was just too heavy-footed.
Yeah. And
just thumped the throttle too much, and around it went.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, it probably was a bit windy, and his tyres might have not been up to temperature, or whatever the reasons that people could come up with. But at the end of the day, he should be a good enough driver to not spin the car there.
Yeah. And not only that, I mean, for
him, just reminded me of something, but carry on.
I was going to say, for him to, excuse me, for him to annihilate the front wing in the way that he did because of the flat spots on the tyres. And this is one of the things with Vettel as well, right? When Vettel spins out, the way he drives straight afterwards is like, I don't know, it's like an alcoholic who's had all his alcohol taken off him. Like, you look at all those times that he spun, like getting close to Hamilton last season. As soon as he spun and facing the opposite, the wrong direction, he was just so aggressive on the throttle, lighting up the rear tyre, destroying his tyres, and it's like, that's petulance. That's.
Well, I've got a list here. I'm going to read out to you.
You've seen it as well then. How many times has Sebastian Vettel fucked up since what date in 2017?
Since the beginning of 2017.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and this is the list. Baku 2017, road rage against Hamilton. Singapore 2017, serious misjudgment and unnecessary risk taking. Mexico 2017, tangle at the start of the race. Baku 2018, destroying his tyres, trying to overtake Bottas and dropping down positions in the closing stages as a result. France 2018, tangle at the start of the race. Austria 2018, grid penalty due to blocking Sainz in Q2. Germany 2018, crashing out of the lead. Italy 2018, spinning after trying to overtake Hamilton. Japan 2018, spinning while trying to overtake. USA 2018, grid penalty due to not slowing down in red flag period and spinning while trying to overtake. Bahrain 2019, spinning out after being overtaken. Bahrain 2019, that was this week, yeah. All right, and then it says, has a multiple world champion ever been so error prone? Oh, edit, forgot about Monza 2018.
Yeah.
So what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 things in a year.
Yeah.
Well, basically in a year. I mean, that's one a month.
That's more. I mean, what would be interesting to find out is whether that is more errors than Romain Grosjean in the same time period.
But not only that, the points that he's thrown away.
Oh yeah.
You're talking about race winning points, 25 points, or points for being at least on the podium being thrown away. Okay, sometimes he's been able to recover to 6th position or 5th position, but he's still thrown away 15 to 20 points. And it's like, that must accumulate to like nearly 100 points or more that he's thrown away.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, yeah, I see the F1 world crumbling around him, and not being daft. He's got to be concerned not only about Leclerc, but about some young kid with a rather special name who's just tested in a Ferrari today.
Yeah, exactly. He looked good as well in red.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some pictures. I've got the timing sheet as well. I mean, to be fair, the timing from the test session is not relevant. To put it into perspective, I think Mick Schumacher was second, and he was 1 second ahead of third, who was a McLaren, I think it was. So the lap times are not necessarily representative. Also, the lap time was a 1:29, and what was pole position? 1:28. Or was it a low 1:29?
No, 1:27.9. No, 1:27.8. It was a new track record.
Yeah. So yeah, the lap times were definitely not there. Steve Whitfield at Steve F1 says, I think Vettel is so worried about running into cars alongside him now that he is turning his wheel too much to avoid the other driver rather than releasing the steering. Could be right, Steve. Or it could just be Vettel's not as fucking good as everybody used to think he is. And I've never...
Well, I've never thought he was good. I've always seen it as he only won the World Championships when he did because that car was massively quicker than anything else.
Yeah.
And the team supported him more than they did Webber.
Yeah.
And that's the only reason why he won 4 titles. And I always said that he's never good in a battle. He's never good at overtaking. No. It always seems to be that he can win if he drives away off the front pole and runs away. If he's not got a car that can run away, he can't win.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, again, I agree with you. I really do agree with you. I mean, his teammate, though, Leclerc, he was class all weekend, easily. I mean, I think
he deserved the win.
He did, yeah.
I mean, I was watching it, and I felt heartbreak for him when Hamilton actually finally overtook him. And the only thing that cheered me up was knowing that I'd actually put a prediction down for Hamilton to win. But
you had no idea how fucking pissed off I was. But
I mean, he should have won it. I was actually sat there thinking, how the hell are Ferrari going to manage this with Vettel not winning and Leclerc being so fast? How are they going to switch this round?
Yeah.
And with Vettel fucking up in the way he did, I'm wondering whether it's a Ferrari thing. Oh, we can't let this young lad run away with more points than Vettel.
The thing is that, I mean, if you remember rightly, on the last podcast, I mentioned about the only way Leclerc can have any effect on the status within the team is to beat Vettel in qualifying and to be ahead of him at the start of the race. Then it's going to be down to the team to fuck him over to get Vettel to win. But that works in Leclerc's favour because everybody would view it as, well, that's Ferrari fucking him over. So Leclerc's in pretty much a win-win-win-win situation. And when you look at it, in many respects, the fact that the car broke down and he wasn't able to win, as an experience, he will have learnt and gained so much from that disappointment that it will make him potentially a better driver, because now he knows he has the ability. He has the ability to blow the rest of the field away. Yeah. So, knowing that he's got that, he's still now going to have that fight and desire to prove it again and win. And okay, it might not happen, it might not come his way, but I think it'd be a driving force for him. I mean, what I liked was his team radio, where you could tell he was getting pissed off. And then when he found out, like, there's nothing they can do, it's going to be like that till the end, I did kind of like his reaction, because I was thinking he's going to be fuming, and he was angry, and then all of a sudden he turns around, apologises to the team, and says, what was it? He's like, I'm sorry, okay, well, let's just see what we can do now. And I'm thinking, okay, the guy's got his head screwed on, because, I mean, think of another driver, let's say Grosjean, right? If that had been Grosjean in that situation, it'd have been moaning, it'd have been whinging, it'd have been whining, it'd have fucking been screaming, and Vettel probably would have been the same. You think about Ricciardo at Monaco when he had the engine problems, and as soon as he found out, look, it's not going to get any better, but it shouldn't get any worse, it was like, okay, no worries, I'll crack on.
Dan, get on with it.
Yeah, whereas other people, it would bug them, it would play on their mind, and it would end up getting worse and worse and worse. And it must have been difficult for him. And to be fair, when Hamilton was closing in on him, I almost felt like Hamilton looked like he didn't want to overtake him, because he didn't just come breezing past him. He kind of like followed him for a lap and then sort of went, well, I can't, I've got to go. But
I thought he might even have put his hand up to say, sorry, I'm overtaking you.
Yeah.
I mean, for Hamilton, it's not the way you want to win a race, but you take it.
Yeah, definitely. You take it all day long. I mean, Hamilton had an odd race in many respects, because, I mean, I thought the start of the race was absolutely fantastic, with multiple changes of position up at the front, and like Leclerc dropping places, then Bottas dropping places. It was fascinating, it really was.
Hamilton overtook Bottas, right? Turn 4, I think it was. Bottas didn't spin.
Yeah, and Bottas is supposedly not that good. Ocon's meant to be better. I did find it hilarious, on the Sky commentary, where Crofty says, did Hamilton just say, what was it? Did Hamilton just say something about Bottas?
I remember the comment, but I can't remember.
Bottas is a bit grumpy or something like that, but it was actually gear shifts are a bit clunky.
But how would he know that Bottas is grumpy or whatever?
But I mean, Hamilton's race was a bit odd, because obviously it didn't start great, then it got a bit better, but then the Ferraris disappeared, and I was surprised. Well, in a way, I was surprised that Mercedes put Hamilton on the super softs on the second stint. But then,
I was surprised at that.
But at the same time, with the pace that they had been lacking at this race, I thought, okay, it's understandable. But after 3 laps? I think 3-4 laps, he was losing time. He couldn't keep up. And obviously Vettel, that's when Vettel pounces and manages to get past him. But interestingly, then Hamilton is able to stay close. But obviously, once Hamilton had pitted and put the medium tyre on, all of a sudden he was rapid again. So I don't know whether it was a misjudgment. I mean, on paper, the fastest tyre for 2 stints should be pretty good. But when you factor in the wind, the slightly lower temperature than what they were perhaps predicting for, the tyres were out of the window and they just did not work.
It's like Max Verstappen, or not just Max, but the Red Bulls struggled all weekend to get that tyre into the window. And it just seemed that the window for that soft tyre was so small that to try and keep it in that window, it was off the pace anyway. Just didn't work.
I mean, Bottas was struggling in the race. I mean, I know he said afterwards, like, the balance wasn't quite right, and if the balance isn't right, you're just going to lose time all the time. So I think he'd be fairly happy. I mean, the thing is, if you remember on last week's podcast, I mentioned about how in Australia last year the Ferraris were slower than the Mercedes, but in Bahrain last year the Ferraris were considerably faster than the Mercedes. So the speed difference was dramatic. So having both Ferraris with that chance of the 1-2 didn't surprise me. But once again, it's a potential victory that Ferrari, unfortunately, have thrown away. Well, Ferrari and Vettel have thrown away. But for everybody else, I mean, I'm trying to think back to certain parts of the race, and there's just so much going on that it's almost all sort of like a blur. I mean, over the last year or so that we've been doing these podcasts, I tend to write notes when watching the races. I decided this year I'm not going to bother. And I'm kind of glad, because I'd have had pages and pages of notes on this race. But I just found myself sitting there watching it and going, this is really entertaining. Like, what's going to happen next? I mean, you've got McLaren's all of a sudden getting in two cars into Q3, and Lando Norris finishing P6. And I don't know if you saw his interview after the race when Nico Rosberg says to him, so if you could put your finger on the main difference of, or the main factor of this car being better than last year, what would it be? Because the drivers.
Great comment.
Yeah. But that's showing that little bit of feisty personality that I know James has said quite a few of the drivers don't really seem to have anymore.
They just go by script too much.
Yeah.
And it's okay sometimes to go off script.
Yeah.
And he went back to the script afterwards. Obviously, he did go on to say, all the guys back in the factory have been working hard, blah blah blah. But that's what you expect F1 drivers to end up saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just shows a more human side if you just say something like, the drivers.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. There's nothing wrong with having fun while you're doing your job. I mean, you look at, Kimi Raikkonen's comment during the race when his engineer says, Kimi, how's your front wing? I don't know, you tell me.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I can't fucking see it. Obviously, the engineer means you got understeer or like...
how's the balance on the car?
Yeah, and as far as Kimi's concerned, it's like, well, if you want to know about the balance in the car, ask me what the fucking balance is like. Don't ask me what the front wing's like, because I can't fucking see it. But and hopefully there'll be more radio comments like that. But I mean, things you look at, like the McLarens had a very good race. Sainz, well, he was unfortunate at the start. Well, was he unfortunate? Well, he squoze Verstappen and he kind of ruined his own race in a way. Lando Norris is showing that he deserves to be in the seat. Because when you look at it at the moment, of those two drivers, if Alonso was going to come back in for a race, who's he going to replace? It ain't going to be Norris, because Norris has scored the points.
Exactly. At the moment, Norris is carrying the team.
Yeah. Haas, well, bit of a shocker for them, I think. I mean, Grosjean retired, I think, didn't he? From damage to the floor. Magnussen, I don't even barely remember seeing him in the race, but I think he was looking after his tyres, trying to go long. The Force Indias, well,
Racing Point.
Yeah. I don't really remember a lot.
I don't remember seeing them.
The thing is, I'm not remembering a lot about the race, but it's not because it was fucking boring. It's because there was just so much going on. I mean, the Toro Rossos, Danny Kvyat was having a great race until he got spun around by Giovinazzi.
Well, not only that, right? Here's something, right? Gasly was outperformed by a Toro Rosso.
Again,
all right. Now, and it was Albon that overtook him. All right. Should Albon be in Gasly's car and Gasly go back to Toro Rosso?
No, it's too soon. Way too soon for Albon. I know Verstappen.
Could it happen?
It could, because it's happened before. But I think, to be fair, when you look at, I doubt very much it would have been Gasly's decision to stay in the pit lane in Q1 in Australia. That would have been a team decision, which royally fucked him. I think Gasly would have one joker in his pocket of saying, well, hang on a minute, you've got to give me a chance because you screwed me in Australia. Bahrain hasn't gone particularly well for him, that's for sure. But at the same time, the Toro Rossos have got the same engine as the Red Bulls. So, and to be fair, that Honda engine in the Red Bulls is working very well, and it's working very well in the Toro Rossos. And Albon is going about his business, and Danny Kvyat is showing to be a better driver than he was previously. That's for sure. It'll be interesting to see how they get on. I mean, one of the main things that I kind of took away from this race was, if you're Ross Brawn, right, you'd probably be sat there after that race with a big smile on your face, proud as punch. A brilliant show, because it really was. It was a brilliant event.
Yeah.
But surely somebody has got to be sat there with him saying, why is Australia the first race?
Yeah.
Because if the first race of the season had been that race this weekend, fuck me, everybody would be excited for the next race. And if the next race was Australia, you'd go, well, you know what, we've seen what the cars can do, but Australia is a bit of a tough one, so let's not expect too much. Instead of, well, it's Australia, it's a bit of a tough one, and then by the time you finished Australia, you were like, well, was it any better? We don't really know. Let's wait till we get to the next race. Whereas Bahrain has just gone, here you go.
Well, there are certain tracks which are difficult to overtake on, like Monaco, and Monaco's never going to be taken off the calendar because it's difficult to overtake on, because it's Monaco. But if we lost Australia completely, I wouldn't be bothered. And for me, if a racetrack, I mean, if you've got a racetrack in Formula One, it's got to give you good racing. Monaco does that without overtaking because of the walls and the barriers. Yeah. That's what gives you the challenge of that circuit.
Yeah.
Australia, to me, as a viewer, doesn't give the drivers any challenge or anywhere where they can overtake. You sit down to watch a race that's not really going to be a race, and you don't really want that. I'd much prefer them to go to a track somewhere where there's possibility of overtaking.
Yeah, or I mean, I was thinking this last night. If I was Ross Brawn, I would be saying, right, Australia, your track is not good enough. Either A, change the track. Right, so you can have it same location, because let's face it, Australia's a great place for F1 to go. The F1, the Aussie fans fucking love it, and it's brilliant going to Australia, I'm sure. But the track is, I mean, actually, I enjoy driving that track, but racing the track, it's not that much fun.
I'd much prefer to see cars going around Bathurst.
I would, but at the same time, if you were to go, right, okay, same location, but let's make some major alterations to the circuit to make it better, right? Yeah. So let's make a change to turn 1 and 2 that will help overtaking. Let's make a change to leave turn 3, because turn 3 into the car park, that bit's alright. The next chicane, let's make some kind of change there that will give people the opportunity of overtaking. You could probably leave the next chicane in, or actually take that chicane out so that you have a much longer run up to the fast left right, which means the cars have to slow down a little bit more and drivers get more of an opportunity to slipstream, potentially more of an opportunity to go for an overtake. You can make 2 or 3 major changes to the circuit, and also the last 2 corners, well, the second to last corner, change that fucker. I mean, even if you turn that into, like, you made it a deeper corner and turned it into more of a hairpin where you had to turn back on yourself so people could have a look at attacking into the corner, because at the moment you don't see anybody attempting an overtake into the penultimate corner. No. And even then,
well, one of the reasons is they might as well wait for the DRS.
Yeah. So they could make some major alterations to that track and all of a sudden, yeah, it's a great racetrack, but I don't think that's going to happen. So I think, I mean, would it hurt them to say, right, let's have Bahrain first and Australia second? Would it? I don't know the logistics of it, but Bahrain is a much better racetrack than Melbourne is.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think, as it stands, that the Melbourne circuit is suitable for the first on the calendar. You need something that's gonna, spark enthusiasm, make people want to watch the sport.
Yeah, And unfortunately, I mean, after Australia, me and James were like, well, it was better than normal Australian Grand Prix, and you're like, well, I just thought it was the same old shit. And that's the division that it takes, which it shouldn't really do. And then to come to Bahrain and have the race that they had.
Well, to put it into perspective, right? Last year's Australia, there was 4 overtakes.
3.
This year there was 50. Was it 3? Yeah. This year there's 15.
16.
All right, 16. I'm close. All right.
Yeah.
How many was there at Bahrain?
Oh, fuck knows. I don't know.
From what I remember, I'm thinking 45 or 46. So it was probably 47. Yeah. So that's the difference in a decent racetrack. Yeah. I mean, 15 overtakes. Okay, it's 50. It's nearly 10 more than the previous year, but it's still not enough.
No, it's not. I mean, what I think as well, I mean, Bahrain, I also see is it's not the easiest of tracks to overtake on, and we did talk about whether the second DRS that they brought in was the right thing to do, and in actual fact, I think we all kind of said no, but in actual fact, I think it was the right decision, because I don't think any of the overtakes that were done there were done before the corner. It was all pretty much side by side into the corner, which is, if you're going to have a DRS, that's what it should do. Not like at Canada, down the back straight. Oh, yeah, there's a car there, right, I'll just move around them and then get back in the racing line. Now I've got 500 metres till the corner. Oh, and then I've got another DRS. So it shouldn't be like that. But I definitely ended up at the end of the race thinking, you know, I can't wait for the likes of Silverstone, Spa, Monza, Hockenheim. Because I mean, can the cars race closer together? Maybe
through fast corners. We haven't been able to. Can't really say yet, can we?
No, because
I want to see cars go nose to tail through Maggotts and Beckett's.
Yeah. That's the kind of corners that you'd really be able to tell. I mean, these first 2 tracks, they haven't really got those kind of corners. But what I would say is the whole pack, is definitely much closer. I mean, for 11 cars to finish on the lead lap when last year only 6 did, that's a step in the right direction. And the thing is, there was action all the way down the grid.
Yeah, I mean, even the Williams were battling some cars from time to time.
Yeah.
Well, actually, come to think of it, I remember seeing one of the Williams overtaking a Ferrari towards the end.
yeah. It's surprising what a fucked engine can do. I mean, just talking about the Williams, I mean, their car hasn't been upgraded yet, and when I was watching the practice sessions, and they were talking about Patrick Head, who is on the board at Williams, sort of helping out and being an advisor. One of the things that, I mean, when we talked about Williams last week, I think you and James were saying, like, Ron Dennis, he'd be the right type of person to go in there, like old school.
They need someone. Yeah.
And that's the thing with Patrick Head. He is that kind of era of, is he a bit old school, and it might take him a while to work out what the problems are, but if he's been doing his job right on the board, he'll know what the problems are. He just needs to work out how he's going to fix them. But hopefully he'll be able to do something. But I know George Russell had said, obviously, as drivers, all they can do is go as fast as they can in the car that they've got. The problem is that the car that they've got is nowhere near good enough, hasn't been upgraded, and, well, if they get any kind of major upgrades coming, is it going to make that much of a difference? Now, when you
the problem is they'll get an upgrade that might help them get a couple of tenths, but all the other teams will be getting upgrades, getting a couple of tenths. So they're always going to be, the same distance behind.
The thing is,
they need to find something.
They need to find seconds, not tenths. And considering that they've got the Mercedes engine in the back, I mean, that's the thing that has got me all along with them. But even more so this year, it's like you have the engine that has effectively won the championship, the Constructors' Championship, for the last 6 years. how are you at the back? You've got the fastest or the best, the most reliable engine on the grid. What the fuck are your engineers, designers, whatever? What are they doing? I mean, I wondered why Rob Smedley was stepping away at the end of last year, and I'm wondering whether it was a case of realising from within, look, I can't fix this and you're not letting me fix it, or I could fix this but you're not giving me what I need to fix this. There's no point me being here. Because they have got serious fundamental problems.
Yeah, big problems. I mean, I can't see where they're going to find 4 seconds.
I mean, I watched the Senna movie, Something to Watch, the other night, and I was watching the Senna movie, and there was one particular line that was said in that movie that I chuckled to myself, right? And basically, it was a news clip on the movie. It was an actual news clip where the news presenter is sat at the desk and goes, "Formula One news now, and one of the richest teams in Formula One, Williams," and I'd started chuckling to myself, and I'm thinking how the world has changed for Williams. If they were seen as one of the richest teams in Formula One, you would probably have to look at them now as probably the poorest, because Racing Point will have more money, potentially more money than they've got.
Haas have got more money.
Yeah, Toro Rosso.
Alfa Romeo have got more money.
Ferrari, McLaren. Well, McLaren, questionable. But yeah.
McLaren have. I mean, McLaren, they got a hell of a lot of money.
Yeah. So I think Williams are... If they don't bring a car that can at least compete, I fear that they can afford to continue racing.
Yeah, just to put it in some sort of perspective, I mean, I know that a year or so ago I looked at the amount of money that teams were spending, and it was like Ferrari is spending about 800 million a year or something, and Sauber at the time were spending 150 million, and Williams were about 200 million a year. I mean that. And if they're still spending 200 a year, I mean, all the other teams are spending probably double that or triple that.
Yeah, it's sad times for them, that's for sure. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the rest of the season, though. I really am.
I've got something to ask you actually.
Go on then.
The F1 test sessions were today.
Yes.
And it wasn't Ocon in the Mercedes; it was George Russell. Any idea why?
Are you sure? Because looking at the timing sheet, I've got Hamilton in a Mercedes, and that was the only Mercedes. George Russell was in a Williams, Kubica was in a Williams.
Oh, I'd read a report that Russell was to be driving the Mercedes.
Maybe he...
maybe that's tomorrow then.
It might be tomorrow.
So I know that Schumacher's in the Alfa Romeo tomorrow.
Is he? Oh, interesting. Yeah. Interesting. I mean, I'm looking at the timing now. Verstappen was fastest with a 1:29.379. And let's see, he did 62 laps. Schumacher 1:29.9 did 56 laps. So it's about race distance. Norris was a 1:30.8, so 1.4 seconds, 0.9 seconds behind Schumacher. He only did 22 laps though. Alonso was back in the car, wasn't he? Yeah, Alonso 11th, a 1:32.2. So how many seconds slower than Norris? 2 seconds, 1.5 seconds.
But he was doing the Pirelli test, so he was on. He may have been on different tyres.
Yeah, that's possible.
He might have been on some development tyre.
Yeah, that explains well why Norris did 22 laps and Alonso did 64. Fittipaldi was 12th in the Haas. Only did 20 laps though. I mean, Kubica and Russell, they only did 46 laps together.
Between them,
46 laps. And to put that into perspective, Danny Kvyat, who was 14th fastest, did 45 laps all on his own.
They probably can't afford the fuel to put in the car.
Oh yeah, I mean, I know that they were struggling for parts, or basically, I know Claire Williams had said to the drivers, like, try not to knock anything off the cars, which in a way I can understand. I mean, I know you'd mentioned on the previous podcast, Steve, that Williams had brought parts for the car, like the wing mirrors and stuff like that, that were deemed to be illegal, so they've had to manufacture new parts. So I could understand if the new things that they've had to redesign and manufacture, I could understand if they're low on parts of those. But if they're low on parts of wings, floors, that's a concern. Suspension
struts and stuff, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because they're the fundamental things that you need, and that's where it screams to me that that's where they can't afford to produce these things, potentially. Also, I want to mention as well, for anyone that watched on Sky and probably saw, if you weren't watching on Sky, watching on anything else, the Ferrari mechanic that had his leg broken in Bahrain last year was back. I don't know how long he's been back. I think he's been back a while. But yeah, he's back and was at Bahrain. But I noticed something interesting about the Ferrari pit stops.
What was that?
Well, when he broke his leg, right, they would have one of their mechanics would basically stand in front of the rear wheel, right, and then would move out of the way before the car goes. Now they don't do that. They don't stand in front of the wheels.
Oh, right, because yeah, the guy putting the wheel on used to put his foot in front of where the wheel goes on.
Yeah. Now, well, when I was looking in Bahrain, I thought, please don't do it again. I did look for it, and yeah, they don't stand in front of the wheels, which sounds kind of fucking obvious, really, but sometimes you have to have something go wrong for people to then go, maybe we shouldn't do that. But,
yeah, I suppose it's like the front jack man. Once he's jacked the car up, he moves out of the way.
Yeah.
With the jack on an angle, rather than standing in the way with it, until the last second.
Yeah.
Kind of makes sense, really.
Yeah. Okay, is there anything else that you wanted to mention about this weekend's race, Steve? Anything that springs to mind?
Can't think of anything. Can't think of anything else. I'll probably remember afterwards.
Yeah, quite possibly. Obviously, unfortunately, James hasn't been able to join us this evening. Hopefully he will. Oh, is that a message on Facebook? Let's see if that's James. No, it's not James. It was a notification. That's a shame. But yeah, James obviously hasn't been able to join us for this evening's podcast, and I know that he had loads that he wanted to talk about as well. So I just hope that whatever's going on with him isn't too bad. So we'll be bringing this one to an end. More than likely, we are going to sit here and go, I meant to talk about that, and I meant to talk about this.
Yeah, and as soon as we go off air, James will turn it.
Yeah, more than likely. Either that or we'll look and he'll be on PlayStation doing delivery.
I wonder if he's not put his clocks back yet. They're forward, sorry.
Well, if he did, he was late for work. If he didn't, he was late for work on Monday. But yeah, I am sure that I'm missing something that I was going to talk about, but I can't remember. It's just completely gone from my mind. Right, well, anyway, 2 weeks' time, all races in there, China. That's an interesting track for these cars, because that's a track that hasn't really produced particularly great races, because the long DRS straight. So go on.
One of the reasons why it's not produced great racing before is we've not had two teams that have been close together in pace up near the front. So maybe this year Mercedes and Ferrari will actually have a bit of a fight.
Maybe. I think Red Bull are going to struggle. They haven't got the straight line speed.
Well, maybe they will. Maybe they will with a Honda.
Well, yeah, maybe. Actually, thinking about it, I think Danny Kvyat had the fast, or was it Gasly had the fastest straight line speed? One of the two.
Oh, that was something I was going to mention actually. There was no dramas about who was going to try and win the fastest lap towards the end of the race. Now, was that because of the safety car coming out, or were drivers just not in a position to be able to push on tyres towards the end of the race.
I think probably a mixture of the two, really. When you look at it, nobody really had the pace to even attempt it. The only way they could have attempted it would have been to have put on a fresh set of tyres. But if they'd have done that, I mean, if you look at it, I mean, if Hamilton or Bottas had done it, they probably wouldn't have finished 1 and 2 because Leclerc.
I think the only one that could have done it would have been Max. But then with Leclerc having his problem, they'd have obviously wanted to keep him out there to try and take that position. It'd have been worth more points.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if at China it might be slightly different. People might try going for it there. But one thing that we have of the first 2 races, it's a little bit like what you said previously, is effectively all you are doing is giving an extra point to the car that's winning the race, because the car that wins the race is the faster one. And unless the others are in a free air situation to be able to go around, let's go and bolt on a fresh set of tyres, or they happen to get DRS 3 times without getting blocked. But yeah, anyway, just going to mention, Steve F1 says, was strange why Shuey Jr. drove the Ferrari today and then switches to Alpha tomorrow. Would have made more sense the other way round. Yes and no. The first F1 team colours you see him in, would you rather, if you're, seeing as he's a Ferrari young driver, if you're the head of Ferrari, you know that every camera will be pointing in his direction. Whose team colours do you want him wearing? Ferraris.
Yeah, I think also there's something else in it as well to do with, they're more open to the media today than they are tomorrow. So there's more media allowed in the paddock. Whereas tomorrow, I think it's just mainly the Formula One media themselves.
Yeah, and also, I mean, yes, it would make sense to tell Steve's turned his PlayStation on. It would make sense to go from the Alfa Romeo to the Ferrari, because you drive a car that's all right to a car that's pretty damn good. But in actual fact, doing it the other way round, it's kind of like, here's what a Ferrari handles like. Now here's more than likely something that you might be driving handles like. So the step from a Ferrari, which is top 1 or 2 car, to here's what an Alfa Romeo's like, what, top 4 team car, that's the difference. So if you're going to go to like top 8 team car, it's going to be even worse than that. So good experience for him nevertheless. I don't know if Sky have been broadcasting the test sessions today. I would have loved to.
I didn't look.
No, I'm trying to think what I've been doing today. Oh yeah, I've been trying to do some drifting today. I would have enjoyed sitting there watching him, see how we get on. He would have got the goosebumps going, I reckon. Because there's not many. I mean, you look at like when Bruno Senna came into Formula One, there was a little bit of hype around him, but unfortunately it was very quickly marred by the fact that unfortunately he wasn't very bloody good. PK Jr., another one that's like, oh, like father in motorsport, blah blah blah, and he wasn't very good. Rosberg, it took him a long time.
Yeah.
Damon Hill was sort of in my very early years of watching F1, so I never really had the connection of, oh, his dad was great or anything like that. But someone like Schumacher, that's like definitely my generation. So it's a little bit like someone that watches F1 over the last 5 years. In 15 years' time, when Vettel's had kids, and there's a young Vettel coming on the scene, they might have more of an affection for that person. And I think that's probably what it's like for many people, that even if they hated Schumacher, and this is the interesting thing about this as well, even people that will have hated Schumacher will probably find themselves looking forward to seeing how good Mick Schumacher is. Not necessarily wanting to see him fail, but wanting to see, like, are you good enough? Can you
just
do
wanting
it?
To watch him?
Yeah,
just wanting to watch him. There is another name in the F2 series at the moment, though, that intrigues me. Alesi.
Yeah.
Yeah, John Alesi's son is in there. I can't remember his first name, but yeah, he looks interesting.
Fair enough. Well, there we go. I must admit I didn't get a chance to watch any of the F2 this weekend, so I don't know if it was any good or worth watching. But to be fair, over the last couple of years of watching F1, it has bored me so much that watching F2 is more entertaining. Having watched the Bahrain Grand Prix, it was more than entertaining enough. More than entertaining enough.
Well, the guy that won the first F2 race of the weekend, is his name Nicholas Latifi.
Oh yeah.
Unbelievable. Honestly, just ran away with it. So much faster than everyone else. He didn't start on pole, battled his way through and ran away. Just showed class as he was overtaking people. Yeah. He is clearly a step above everyone else that's in there.
Yeah,
apart from maybe one other guy, I think his name's Giotto or something. He's not too bad. He was on pole.
Is it Kyoto?
Giotto,
something
like that. Yeah.
But, well, okay. Dave Harp says DGT League. Don't forget to get that in now. Don't forget to get that in. Now that was an opening race. Go on there, Steve. Plug it.
Okay. In the comments, you'll find DGT League.
Not in the comments. In the description.
Not in the comments. In the description, you'll find DGT League YouTube channel. Jump on there, watch the race. It's better than Formula One. And yeah, great commentary as well. It's PlayStation 4 Gran Turismo Sport Racing League. And if you're interested in competing, drop us a message on our YouTube channel or find us on Facebook. A Dynamic GT League, yeah. Come and have some fun.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, right? You know how on the last race of the DGT League last championship, the Toyota SFR, I put a little, like an extra couple of clips of outtakes on the end of the video, right?
Yeah.
Well, when me and James sat down to do commentary on Sunday evening, we were sat just having a conversation for about an hour and a half, and then was like, right, okay, let's get this commentary done. Do you want to have a guess how many times we've restarted?
About 6. Can we start again?
It was 5, right? 3 times James went, oh fuck, sorry Dave, I've pressed pause. Right, so we had to restart 3 times because James pressed pause, and then one of them, right, bear in mind, he's just pressed pause 3 times, literally in a row, and then I'm doing the intro bit, right, the drivers are ready, blah blah blah, and then James goes, oh shit, it's not played. I was waiting for it to zoom in on Dave the ARP and it didn't do anything, and then I realised the timer's on 0. I'm like, fucking hell. I think the worst one was, one of the pauses, we'd got about 8 minutes in and he hit pause, and it was like, oh fucking, I was like, well, you know what, we were pretty shit there anyway, so let's start again. So yeah, we started again about 5 times. We were proper rusty on doing the commentary. Anyway, but yeah, check it out folks. It is interesting, it's exciting, and the cars that are being used this season are absolutely fascinating, and more than likely I'm going to be saying to Steve in a couple of minutes, do you fancy going and doing a bit of practice around the track for the next race? So if any of the DGT League drivers are watching this, and keep an eye out, we might be on GT Sport shortly. We also might not be. We might go and play some football instead.
I've had 2 beers. You want me to go drive?
That was your choice. I've had no beers. I can drive. But yeah, so with James not being here this week, more than likely we'll probably do a short podcast next week, as long as James is available, and we'll do our predictions for the Chinese Grand Prix then, and perhaps get James's views on how this race went, if he can remember it then. So yeah, make sure you come and join us for that. Right.
Did you want me to say something?
I was leaving the gap, yeah.
Yeah. We'll see you next time.
I'll tell you what, I'll leave you on this. 2 days ago, a burger from space landed in Colchester United's training ground. Have a good one, folks. See you all later.
Blah 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 blah.